Alrighty, and we are online. Happy Monday, everybody. It is December 30th, almost New Year's here for episode 86 of the Leonis Report. JV and I back a week after our big 2024 year in review stream last Sunday. It seems like it's been forever, but it's good to be back. But yeah, how's it going, man? How's things?
Going pretty good. It's always a busy time of year with the holidays, and we had some family in town, so that was nice. And just got to enjoy, with my son. Christmas morning is always like a highlight of the year. Just seeing he still believes in Santa and everything, and that's
Yep.
always definitely one of the highlights of parenthood. So that was great, and I've been enjoying some time off from work, and yeah, the game has been chugging along. Nothing kind of a little bit down, in terms of like what's going on in the game, but I think that's a good thing for this time of year, so I think that's fitting. How about you? How was the last week or so?
It was great. Honestly, been an absolute blur. Obviously, yeah, Christmas festivities. I had Christmas Eve party and then Christmas Day party and a bunch of presents. And this last weekend was one of the best weekends we've had in a while. I am on absolute fumes at the moment. We did a little weekend get it. We went to the Patriots game on Saturday afternoon where they played the Chargers. We were in front row. A little fun fact I shared it with the guild that we made television so that they featured us like in the highlight intro of fans in the stands and like focused in on us, and that was absolutely awesome. We had a hotel right there in Patriot Place, so we went the night before, spent the whole day there, day drank, tailgate, and then the night stayed over. And yesterday we ended up going straight to Boston instead of back home to where we live, and we had a great gift card there out at a steakhouse in the Prudential Center and Newbury Street. There's a Genshin Impact pop up store that we specifically wanted to get to, so this was like a loaded week of stuff to do, and a lot of fun. The weather's actually kind of amazing here. It's like 55 degrees here in New England, which is absurd in the last week of December. So it was good.
I know it's crazy how warm it's been. Actually today, with the sun came out a little bit, and it felt even warmer than that. So that was crazy.
Yeah.
You did you get any swag there at the Genshin store?
I did not get swag, but I mean, I got a couple things. Like we got little pop up figurines, and we got posters, and I'm overall pretty
Nice.
happy. Some small things. More than anything, we just wanted to go to buy a couple things and like throw some money at it to support him because we want that kind of store to come back. Love those kinds of things where it's just a little hole in the wall on Newbury Street, but there's enough. It's fun.
I was actually over in that same area for Christmas Eve. Myself and the family, we went in to see the Boston Pops. They do kind of their yearly Christmas concert, which is a lot of fun, and so we did that, and my son really loved that.
So I was actually going to send you a message from our hotel room. We were on the 25th story of the Hilton, and we were in Back Bay there, and directly below us was that like the big Church of Scientology that's there, but
Mm,
next to it is the Boston Pops, so I could see
yeah,
the Boston Symphony Hall right from where our hotel room. I was going to send you a snap or something.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were there that day. That's funny.
Yeah, yep. But
Nice.
no, we do have a huge lineup of stuff to potentially go over. Now, admittedly, this week we don't have any like specifically new content coming into the game quite yet. They did delay the patch by a week. They're enjoying their holiday this time of year also, but we do have a rough idea of what's coming. Not this week, but next week. So we are going to cover that. But before we get into some of that, which is mostly Vinera and Final Fantasy XIV, just a couple quick things just to highlight that. Number one, they obviously put a public statement out about this, that their customer service is a little bit slower this time of year. So obviously they're on vacation as well. And, they're a company. That's not unexpected. So, a little bit of a slower turnaround time if you're submitting some customer things. And I think that's totally fine. And I think that's right in line with what we expected given the extended release schedule. But they're not leaving us out to drive because they are giving us a Happy New Year campaign tomorrow. So for 3 straight days, you can get 2025 Viz once a day. So you can get 6K Viz next week and a whole bunch of other items. Obviously, they outline the extent of that here. They're also giving you a 5 UR guarantee free 10 times summon. That's on New Year's Day as well. Double up campaigns. There's a brand new January login bonus that we'll be getting access to. And then they also announced the purchase bonus where you're going to be getting upwards of 150 transcendent mind spheres. You can get a little bit every single day. And the whale bonus, if you will, the 5K, is basically like an Instamax of a UR vision card. Now, you can't get the shard, you can't get the card, but you get 275 shards to level that up in addition to 200 UR scrolls. So for an off week, I mean, this is actually superior, I think, than what they're offering this week. Where this week's actually kind of a dud with the Rainbow Mind Spheres and the, we hate these weeks.
Yeah, I mean for veterans of the game, veteran spenders, especially like this week with like a Blossom and there's like prisms and stuff like that. It's absolute garbage. It's not enticing me to even spend that daily dollar where often I would like if it's like a good purchase bonus or if it's shards that I need or what have you. So
Yep.
yeah, this looks much better. I mean, 6,000 plus Visior for free, these first few days. That's a nice bonus, especially with, some new interesting units coming in. So excited to grab them.
Definitely so. And the other quick thing here is kind of a community shout out that we wanted to right front and center bring some attention toward. It is season 3 of the WBEL, and I'll let you kind of take it away. This is hosted by Numero 80, but you've shoutcasted, you've got some experience. So yeah, what are you looking forward to with the WBEL? What's it about? Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a community tournament. Basically, this is if folks are familiar with the WDL that Kason used to run, it's kind of a spiritual successor to that. It's some similarities, also some differences to it. It's not a draft league, so to say. Although you do draft your team, it's not like a singular copy of the unit, like per division kind of thing. But it's a very fun league, custom cost structure and interesting rule sets and a passionate community. We do shoutcasting for the games, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely check it out. There, I think he may have made a post even on the Reddit and certainly on various Discords. So yeah, definitely check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, I unfortunately had to pass last season when he started it, just because there was so much going on for me, like content wise, with the channel and just in game stuff. I'm not committed to joining it yet, but I'm heavily contemplating it. And if not joining, at least maybe popping in for a shoutcast once in a while, because that is again one of the coolest types of content there is. It to me is one of the best things to bring some life and attention to some units that don't always get to within the established game modes right now in the game. And so not only do you get this fun community of where you get to know each other, there's obviously like a big culture of making that community stronger, but just being able to actually see those units in action and adjusting costs for them and whatnot, it's an absolutely amazing idea. A lot of work, but I highly recommend it to tune in if you guys haven't already.
100%.
Yep. But no, we are going to at least talk about a little bit of the content that we are expecting. We have more news than we know what to do with, not only from like what we're anticipating, but what we're getting on the JP side as well, where there's a ton that got announced for them, and we are going to touch upon some of it, but not the least of which is the new Vinera unit, and we've known about her for weeks. This is no surprise. This is the part 2 of the evade meta, of the dagger meta, really what elevates Rikku in many forms to more than just the mono earth iterations that we're probably used to seeing. This is a new lightning unit that element we saw didn't get a lot of love in this last year. It's been a while since they had really like a hardcore 100 cost. The Ramada Pierce unit comes to mind, but that was really it for much of the year. And so
I mean, they kind of live in and dying with Luciel. I mean,
yeah.
It's not the DPS carry, but it's certainly a significant unit at least.
That is a good counterpoint though about seeing lightning in the swing of things. But yeah, she is I think arguably the most evasive unit in the game by maybe a couple percentage points over Rikku. They do it slightly differently in different ways in terms of I know Riku's got some extra AoE evade niche, and Vinera here has some more single target evade benefits comparatively. She is a commander, which is noteworthy in itself, that there are obviously benefits to lightning units where you're getting lightning attack and accuracy for that team. And then this is also for spear, fist, dagger, and gloves, where you're getting some AoE res and crit damage. They did add this on Votive Calc to be able to see the commander effects. It's a little bit hard to read, if only because I think the way this works is you have to kind of like add both sections together to know what the actual number is. So at a glance, it can be kind of difficult, but not including the commander skill, same idea. You have to like add these two different boxes together. But I think it's noteworthy that she's a commander. It is obviously for, oh my God, where was it? Game mode. What game mode is it?
I think she is for Guild War, right?
I thought it was Guild War.
Yeah,
We'll have to double check on that, or if anyone in chat knows what her commander
it
effect
doesn't
is
say
for.
here.
All right,
So
we
just
got.
before we go further, just like we're not getting this, this week. This I think we have kind of an extended, basically week here until the 6th, I believe, is when we kind of project this slate of units to be coming in, and we think Vinera is going to be part of that, based on JP side. So kind of preemptively getting to the news here.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to preemptively hype anybody up. Yeah, she is not coming this week. Honestly, we'll likely talk about her next Monday as well. So, we're going to address her a little bit right now just to give an introduction for those that may not know much about her. But, yeah, I mean, I think this is a kit that's kind of complex to the average player. There's some honeycomb in here. Her self buff is near unreadable on votive calc, and it's actually much easier to digest than it really is written here. It's basically some AoE wide res. What is it? The revive, an increased chance to stun, dispel haste. So there's a lot of good things about this character from like a teammate utility perspective to what you can grant to them. But she's also got some really interesting offensive stuff in her kit where she's a unit that brings two new status effects into the fold that we haven't seen all that often. One of them being the Doom status effect. I don't think you're going to see this all the time in all of your fights, but you're going to see it more than you're used to seeing. I think that's objectively true. And the other one is the stun coming back here, and this is the increased chance, upwards of 40% chance because of that buff. And so that alone, I think, caught a lot of people off guard. And there's a lot of imperils in here, which we haven't seen a lot of crush imperils in a while. There was a time where every unit was getting those, and they kind of pivoted and went more from like the penetration angle. But we're getting some crushes in here. We got the barrier break on the 120 with a different way to inflict stun. There's two different ways you can do it. It's kind of crazy. This looks like a really fun unit.
I think so too. And obviously, Rikku has been a pretty popular play in global here. So I think folks might be interested in Vinera as a potential partner unit. I think the kit looks pretty solid. Like she has the barrier break in there as well on the job 25. It's an AoE barrier break. It's in that X pattern, which is it kind of looks strange, but it's actually maybe I think this maybe like a range 5 if you kind of count the offset. She does have the crushes that you mentioned and the ailments. The kind of the strange thing for me here is that she's more of like an area damage unit, and she brings the area crush, which I think is a little bit unfortunate for the Rikku pairing because Rikku is a unit attacker for the most part. She does have at least one AoE, a diamond AoE, but I'd say that her more significant attacks are unit based. So that's not like the ideal synergy that I would be looking for when pairing these two. The evasion is definitely there. I think that global has been ready for it though, at least in Riku's case. People have Shrek online. I think that Vinera is going to be a little bit more difficult for Shrek to hit though. She can definitely do it, but what Vinera brings is unit-based evasion, and that's kind of how she inches up and her power creep in the evasion department, whereas Rikku has the area effect evasion that and even on like Vinera's weapon and her buff, she kind of gets that amplified. So that's kind of the unique wrinkle that she brings, and maybe that does make the difference when kind of going up against Shrek, which a lot of people have been turning to for those evade matchups.
I agree totally, and I'm actually glad you brought that up about the difference in the AOE shred here. The way I like kind of figured it was that if you make these units too similar, you run the risk of making them too oppressive together. But I also see this as a way of them kind of like spreading out the ways that you can defend against them. Where we've seen some metas where you get a couple units together that are like purely big diamond attackers, maybe purely single target attackers, and so you can guard against that a little more easily. And so not only in a matchup like this do you have to stack both your unit res, but you also have to stack your AoE res. If you're imbalanced in one or the other, either Rikku or Vinera is going to take advantage of that. And I think that was kind of the same with how one has an AoE evasion niche and another one has a unit type of niche where if you're depending purely on single target attacks to take out this evade meta, well, this is some like counterplay that you're going to have to diversify your team in some way that it's not really like making them too homogenous in what they do. But I think it's a great call out because you're right. A lot of people might look at this and try to see like where they connect. I know we did that famously for like Crimson Wizard and Sottily to see how well do they complement each other. And although technically they do, I don't think it's to the, right down the middle slam dunk effect that we always see it, but I still think it's valuable in that other way of how you approach that team.
I think I do think that's a good point. Kind of making it harder to directly counter build. I think that's a great point. I would say though that her kit and the way it's designed does also make it very synergistic. I think with the better lightning DPS units that, or a couple of them that are out there right now with Thunder God Sid and also Ramada.
Great call.
Both of them, I think, would appreciate. They both do have area resist penetration, but they don't have shreds. And of course, you can kind of, those two things can coexist and make their damage even better. So, another thing, Sid doesn't have an amazing defense penetration value. So the defense shred here could also be pretty nice for him as well. So folks that are like to play mono lightning, that could be something that you look at. So I do like that. She does have like some interesting defenses there that you mentioned. Another difference from Rikku, Rikku has the triggered guaranteed hit null. When somebody hits her and she goes below 70% health, then the guaranteed hit nullification comes online, which I think in some cases can be a little bit problematic for her if somebody does have one-shot potential on her and has like a follow-up from, either Yuna or like a built-in follow-up. She can go down very quickly. Vinera, on the other hand, does have that on her buff where she kind of gets that right at the beginning of the fight. So it's another small differentiation there.
Yeah, again, great call out for how they like do something similar but very differently. Same kind of concept. Yeah, this is a fun unit. I'm a fan. I was going to mention one other thing about the lightning synergy. I can't remember what it is, but that's okay. I don't think it was all that important. Oh, it was. Sorry, guys. It's worth me thinking about. Hold on. Maybe it's not. I can't remember what I was going to say. Regardless, I do like this unit. I don't know if it's a must pull for some. I think it's really account specific. We've talked about this. There was kind of like two decision trees about a month ago when they started going missile and then Rikku. You kind of picked your poison. What do you want to do? Do you want to go one way or the other? Because it's hard to go halfway in either one of them. You either have to go like Yuna and Jayden, or you go Rikku and Vinera. Obviously, you can pick and choose. It's not a must, but I think a lot of people have been prepared for Rikku. We've actually gotten some things that have delayed her coming here. Not only this extra week of non-content, but even getting the winter Perrene extended things by a week. So we've had a little bit of a stagger from when we were initially projected to get her. So I think people are ready. Yeah. We've been waiting. Oh, that's what it was. The Dispel Haste on this second buff here. To your point about someone like Ramada, I know Dispel is famously kind of missing in some of those lightning teams. That this does help with it. Thank you. I knew I was going to... Yeah.
For me, like I know that over in JP, this particular combo has been around, but it hasn't really taken off like in the top ends of play. Like there hasn't been like a true evasion meta where like people are walling evade, all the time. I think it's peppered in a little bit, but not really when you think about like two significant units coming out, two significant vision cards. I feel like it still needs something else to kind of push it to that point. I feel like we have a couple of very good building blocks, and it's something that is playable and usable, but not like a meta-defining team formulation just quite yet. So, I wouldn't I don't know if I could have my hopes up, through the roof, but I think it's still kind of a work in progress as far as I see it.
I agree. And I actually think we made that same comment on the missile teams where we felt similarly that they can contend with the meta, and we obviously see them used in some degree at the top end, but there's still one piece there that's really missing them from really being the defining, building block. But, they're certainly close to here. I think the Winter Perrene vision card helped a little bit. That's also a dagger-oriented vision card. We'll see what else they come out with here in the near future. But I think with Sottily maybe starting to subside, maybe you'll see some more... play out of an era, where I know that element disadvantage always is in the forefront of everyone's mind too. But yeah, this is a solid unit.
Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And like Vinera, like a significant story and like lore unit, obviously too. So it's she has had two versions in the game. You know, one very early on in the first year that was like a defining evasion unit of that era,
Yep.
and then obviously there was kind of a swing and a miss with the strike version of her. Although the unit looked great, she just never was really a good unit. But
Yep.
I'm happy to see Venera is one of my favorite characters, like lore wise. So I'm glad to see that she's back in a significant role here as a fighter again, rather than just kind of hanging back on the sidelines.
I agree. She's been peppered in the lore forever with this whole subplot of her and, was it Tyrell? No, what's the MR unit, that they're like basically
Yeah,
getting away with Dario's child, and the implications of that. And it's nice to see her finally have some in-game relevance beyond just being a plot device of a, I don't know, babysitter. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. But we are also getting, in addition to that, we did kind of get a confirmation that Final Fantasy XIV would be coming in the week of January 6th, which does align with next week. Kind of the same idea of the projected release schedule, not this week, but alongside Vinera is our 14 rerun and all the enhancements that come with it. And Thancred has been getting a significant rework here as the staple unit to Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm very happy they decided to give him the Final Fantasy Tactics treatment. He's had some relatively good play on the JP side of things. I think he's a pretty strong addition to the Sword Knight group here, and I do like that they are starting to make up for a lot of his weaknesses and also kind of redefine his role again, where I think as the game evolved, he's obviously like a day one unit. He has a very confused kit over the life of the game, and I think they finally decided how they want to use him. It seems to be decently effective. They obviously, I mean, I don't think we can go through all the different stat elements of it at the moment, but they've certainly done enough to give him a whole bunch of agility percent here in the and mastery ability. He's got accuracy kind of peppered all over the board, in addition to some of his hits being upgraded to guaranteed hits. He's gotten new tech like this AoE res pen of 30. The 25% debuff weakening is on average higher than many units. Most units kind of get like 10 to 15 innately, so they went a little bit above for him. Obviously, the extra accuracy there too. Crit evade. You can go up and down his kit. He still does not have a limit break, which some people might think is a big demerit, and in some cases it is. Limit breaks are like a major form of power creep as of late, where those are defining abilities that really swing the tide. I don't know if he really has that singular ability that will change the fight like some limit breaks do, based on the kit overall here, but each one of these abilities really does have something to bring to the table in terms of increasing enemy unit res pen, so that against those select two he can do relatively well. He's got some movement based ones here that are the guaranteed hit that also increase that agility and the 60 crit evade, which is pretty awesome for the type of meta that we're in right now. You have a brand new aura effect here, and I'll obviously talk more about this too, but the general damage taken, there's a lot that they did here to bring him up to speed. I think it worked. I like it.
So first and foremost, they I would say that this is getting essentially the Final Fantasy Tactics treatment in terms of the quality of the upgrades and essentially like a fully reworked kit and unit. And for folks that don't know who didn't have Thancred, like maybe you didn't play around that time, this is essentially going to be a free unit that you can get from the event. There's going to be a lot of shards available, like through tickets that you can grind out and just freebies that they give out as login rewards and that you can get from the shops. So, for veterans that already have them, it's going to be an easy reincarnation. It's going to be an easy build of the unit if you didn't have them already. And in terms of the quality of the upgrades, bottom line is he's ranked very, very highly over in JP, and he's ranked that way for a reason. He's essentially going to be uh, a new magic tank for the game,
Yep.
and a magic tank who is very effective against missile damage as well. So this is a unit I think that can be very effective against the current missile team in terms of tanking their damage, but also with that aura effect, it's a 30% magic damage reduction for his team as well. So that's very, very nice. Also crit evasion in there, which is and the chain resistance, which both of those things are very effective against what that missile team tries to do with
Yep.
kind of their multi-hit attacks and high dexterity and things like that that they bring. So that's all very nice, and I think that the quality of the upgrades they've given here, I think, makes up for the fact that he doesn't have a limit burst. And it's crazy that we're saying that Thancred is going to be usable in the year 2025 when, looking back on the history of the game, even like the first couple of months of the game, this guy was barely played or barely usable outside of like that first few weeks when he was this, one of the fastest units you could raise. So
Right.
um, it's very very substantial and another player friendly collab here, which is nice to see.
Yeah. I still can't get over the fact that they made him a magic tank, considering where he started the game. That
Yes.
right now he's at a whopping negative 30% magic resistance. They did slightly change that. They brought him up to at least negative 15%, which is still a negative. It's obviously something you still want to think about, but his, hold on a second, he does have options here in the passives to still bring it up a little bit higher. Obviously, he has his one main passive that you're going to have on all of the time, but he does also now finally have an upgrade here that he can have that chance of being targeted, where for a long time he had this very confused role of being a tank or not a tank, or brawler or not a brawler, where the game was still kind of figuring out how they wanted to make their tanks work. And so now they've kind of given that defined role with the magic emphasis. And one of the really nice things about this aura effect that is similar to Agrius is that it applies to himself. When these aura tanks were first coming out, even as recent as like Dario and Oldoa, their effects don't apply to themselves. They apply to teammates around themselves. So although he still has that negative magic resistance, this is still going to apply to himself, that he's going to reduce all magic damage by 30%. So, well, you still obviously want to keep that in mind, and he's not going to like, you know, be, I think, like Fryevia level in terms of like how much anti-magic he can take. He does have things within this kit as well in terms of like the all element res that he has, and the other well-roundedness of having like a reduced physical damage percent, that you can forego some of the physical tankiness and go for more of that magic resistance, knowing that within his kit he's got some extra anti-physical stuff. He's also got a general reduction of all damage of 50%. So again, very hybrid-esque in that regard. And to your point, that does help in that missile meta where he innately has always been kind of a missile king. 20% missile resistance here. He's going to get another 15% on this passive. I know he was one of the first units initially that you could like nullify missile damage, and I think you'll likely still get close enough. So, and answering Burberry Blue, we are going to do the tier list here shortly, so we're going to take all of this into account. But yeah, Thancred, they did really, really well here with him.
Definitely. Excuse me. They have also given him some stat upgrades as well. They've actually given him an immense amount of HP.
That's
where
right.
today in global he's around 3,900 base HP. They've put him up to almost 5,400 base HP, so essentially about 1,500 HP on his base, and he's become the highest base HP unit in the game, even including next gen units. Like, it's not even close. Like,
Correct.
Duran was the highest base HP at just over 5,000. Thancred is coming in here with 300 more than that in his base, which is, he's gonna be able to get reincarnated. He'll be up there 20,000 plus HP. Awesome. He's got the barrier. Like, he's gonna be like a brick wall to get through for many units in the game, including magic units with that aura, which is no easy task to get around. So he's also been made incredibly accurate, which is another like kind of thing that is funny to say about this unit, because he's never been accurate. It's always
Not
been
even close.
Kind of a hole for him. They've given him a bunch of flat accuracy. I think they gave him maybe a little bit of dex and luck in the base stats as well. But
Yep.
He can do a little bit of damage too. He's got the 60 AoE res pen with his buff, so he's going to have a pretty decent attack value with the knight cards. A lot of them have high attack values and things like that. So
Good call.
Good utility with the courage removal. He's got a break in there. I don't know. He's going to be a solid unit. So I like this quite a bit. It's essentially Gumi giving us another free unit here that can be used in the meta, which is nice and helps for the overall competitive environment that we're seeing at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. Super, super hyped for it. And they are technically giving an upgrade to Yshtola as well, who, admittedly, I don't think there's much to necessarily analyze. They really went into making her a pure magic nuker. And for 50 cost, she actually has some rather stellar penetration levels that she'll get to. Her HP is still grossly
She did not get an HP upgrade,
memeable.
really.
She has 1893 HP, about 2000 HP. Regular. So good luck with that. The penetrations in the world sound great, but unless she can live for longer than a turn, nothing's going to happen. I don't want to overanalyze this or hype it up. Other than for a 50 cost unit, it's a relatively okay upgrade. I still can't imagine her being used even in cost limited content. I think the other 50 cost units likely still have the edge over her.
I think so, just from the survivability standpoint. I think that her damage is probably going to be superior to most 50 cost units out there just because of the penetrations are extreme, especially with the black mage cards and things that are available too. But yeah, she's gonna be like a feather basically. If you breathe on her, she'll die. So they did give her the innate re-raise like Vivi has, which is actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
And there is like some re-raise ceiling available in black mage too. But I don't know. It's kind of just a fun play, a fun unit to toy around with, because this is a 100% free unit as well.
Yes.
This is can be grinded out very easily. So
I agree.
just don't expect too much.
No, totally. And they are also giving some weapon upgrades that, worth going over. They are upgrading the Lionheart replica. For Thancred, he's getting 30 light attack, 20 slash res pen, 8 AoE res. I don't know if this is the best in slot weapon. Light does have some really other compelling options. If it is best in slot, it's very close.
Ooh. I think you'll have to remember that this is the only weapon in the game that Thancred can use.
Oh, you're right. Because
So if you remember that wrinkle.
he's Gunblade only. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And for folks that haven't built this one yet, I would 100% recommend the aim builds
Yes.
on this weapon so that he can retain some good accuracy and then still use an armor piece.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I completely forgot about that, particularly because he's technically Sword Knight. I just kind of thought like, okay, he equips swords again, but it's been a while. You're right. Great swords only. Gunblades only.
It's a nice upgrade though, with like the 45 mod there, and the penetration and some AoE res. So they kind of designed it to go with the survival vest or something like that. I think in most cases.
Admittedly, I'm still on the fence whether I'd want to go for a weapon on him as opposed to more of a tankier piece of equipment, given what his role is. Obviously, only the 8 AoE resistance here applies, and that's penetrated and crushed a little more easily than it had been historically. But, I think there's an argument you could be had for how you want to use him, but he's going to be doing a lot of damage, so this is still a very compelling option.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like it comes down to the build and what you're trying to do, because he can be played as not a tank and just as a bruiser with an aura,
Right.
kind of like how Sodali is used, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because the 7 hate that he has is optional,
Correct.
right? He doesn't have any active hate that he turns on. It's just that 7. So he's kind of more of like an off tank or pseudo tank. He's not really like a full blown tank that can regenerate hate throughout the fight, but.
Yep.
I think you can do more damage than the damage potential is higher than most tanks that we've seen in quite a while, if ever. So
I would agree with that, absolutely. He's similar to Duran, quite frankly. Duran's got a similar idea,
yeah,
where he's got a passive that you can put on, and obviously he's meant to do damage, but he does have that tank component of himself.
yeah.
Yep. And then in addition to that, we are getting some other upgrades to items that we memed on a little while ago, and
That's true.
They actually saw through us and made these upgrades. So the Bale Gauntlet is getting some unique effects for the Final Fantasy XIV units. For Thancred, and Yshtola, 20 initial AP. Or I'm sorry, for Thancred in particular, 20 initial AP, 8% physical damage reduction, the 10 debuff weakening. This is where you can have some fun with that build if you want to go a little extra tanky against that physical magic damage. Obviously, debuff weakening helps for things like crushes and healing power down on him, where maybe you're trying to keep him up a little bit. You're still getting the 8 unit res and the 8% magic res, which does help his negative magic resistance innately just by having this on. I think this is a fun upgrade. I don't know if it's best in slot again, but I think this is a very compelling choice when you're thinking about how you want to build them for the matchups you want to take them into.
Super nice upgrade. Like, I think this just had the magic resistance at the +5. So I think that everybody in the game now gets magic res and unit res if they use this. I think go up to the base stats for a moment. So this has a very high accuracy build that you can use as well with the dexterity. Pretty solid upgrade, I think, especially for Thancred, with the physical damage reduction and kind of gives him some overall well-roundedness in terms of his mitigation.
Definitely. And actually, I'm glad we're talking this out. I also didn't mention the fact that he's not a armor user. He's a cloth user. So you have slightly more limited defensive options than what you might be used to seeing with some of these heavier armor tanks that you've been throwing the oh god, what's the armor? Is the break? No. What's Maximilian armor?
Maximilian.
Right,
Yeah.
you just throw the Maximilian armor on them and they just go. You don't have that same option here, so you have to think outside the box a little more for these cloth options.
Yeah, so Undarius is bringing up the debuff weakening. He does have 25 debuff weakening he gets from his dream upgrade. This gets him to 35. I don't think he buffs on any more. Let me double check.
I didn't think so.
No.
Okay. But there are vision cards.
You can go to vision cards, to kind of enhance that further. There's also Dark Siren that you can get the 20 on the board.
Yep.
So it can help him protect some of those stats from the shreds out there.
Absolutely. And they are also upgrading a UR raid gear that was actually pretty good for a while when Kane was meta, way back when, Dark Dragoon Kane. This was the Bale Burgeonet that no one's used it in years, so far as I know. Yeah. Right now in Global, this is 25% Disable Res and 10% Pierce Res. This is basically a Trust Stone passive at this point, but in JP, they're at least bringing the Disable Res up to 40% and that Pierce Res up to 15%. They are getting some stat upgrades to it, just for like HP and defense. This, to me, is still a very niche piece of equipment, obviously focused on Pierce Res or really cancerous disable metas. I don't know if we're in that at the moment. I think most disable is still like trust stoneable for many people. I don't know if you would use a whole armor or helm considering the type. Not as good of an upgrade for UR gear in my opinion, but yeah.
They did also eliminate the negatives on the gear of the agility and the critical rate, which were previously baked into the items. So that's pretty nice. There isn't, yeah, you're right. There I don't think there is anything above a 25% disable currently, and obviously there's not a ton of pierce threats at the moment. So I think this is like a stash away. I would definitely build it.
Oh yeah.
I think that there was a disable limit burst teased on a new unit that we'll talk about later.
Yep.
So, that could be nice for that in the future.
Absolutely so. But we are also getting some vision cards here as well. One of them is a free vision card. One of them is a pullable vision card. And I believe this is the free one.
Yes, the Yshtola card. The Yshtola focused card is the magic one. That should be the free one, if I remember correctly. It's this one.
This one. Okay, excellent. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. This is not a bad card. I know we often look for something to determine whether it's a main slot card or not. I know debuff weakening, though, has always been one of those ones. It's kind of borderline. We've had some compelling arguments why having a lot of debuff weakening in the main slot can be equivalent sometimes to the area res or the unit res, depending upon who you're going against when it comes to like crushes and whatnot, or healing power down and what that does depending on your team. This to me though does, I think, safely sit in a subslot. I mean, it's a whopping 42 magic attack, 20% debuff weakening, 25% spirit pen. It's the second card that offers that. The Nichol card was the first card ever that enabled that. Ironically, this is also for books, so this does cover 4 different groups. So book is suddenly spirit pen heavy, but book, bow, sword, warrior, and staff black mage. I like that there are 4 groups. I don't know if it's the strongest selection just based off the fact that book and bow are a little bit light overall in terms of what they offer, but Book and Bow are some of the best rainbow units in the current state of the game in some capacity. And so, when you talk about Sword Warrior, those are units that also you can splash into a variety of different teams. So I think that aligns with how we normally build those classes. And Staff Black Mage obviously isn't going to complain about these offensive upgrades. I like the bestowed of the 10 unit res. I think it's a good card, particularly as a free card.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there is actually we'll talk about in the JP news as well a new Black Mage unit coming in that I think would like this card as well. I agree, it's probably more of a sub slot card, but definitely a banger sub slot to get like that offensive potency, built in there. So I think this is now a couple of free cards now that we have access to, if you count Paine's Vision card that we just got this week, which both of them UR quality. I'd love to see that for again that competitive nature of the game, giving out more usable things to the masses is a good thing. So definitely grab this and build it up. Should be relatively easy to do so.
I agree. And yeah, I would absolutely run this card in a mono Black Mage team. Chris Metz asked that question. I mean, still at the end of the day, I got to just evaluate the 6 that I'd put in there, but I see no reason why this couldn't be a top tier choice for one of your 6 vision cards.
Yeah.
Yep. The other one, the gotcha oriented vision card we're getting, is only 3 teams, or 3 groups. This is Great Sword, Gun, and Sword Knight, but there is some established synergies, at least between Great Sword and Gun, and I think even Sword Knight and Great Sword too, a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a card that 60% attack, 12 spirit, 20% magic, wide res. This isn't my favorite card ever, but there's still a couple things on here that I overall think have value. I like the 15 luck and the 3 agility that they put on this for stats alone. I do like the 15% accuracy. I think that in this meta does have its own kind of value. Obviously, we look at Guild War effects as kind of a premium on some of these hollow effects. 15 crit rate certainly helps, particularly for these gun cards, where gun units want to crit very consistently. The 60% attack, I don't think anyone's going to complain about. And the 20% magic wide res is kind of one of those debatable main slot attributes you look for. It could be physical wide res, could be regular AoE res, could be that you want 24%, 20% is a little bit less, obviously. So I think there's some like pros and cons, but overall, I think it's a relatively solid card.
I like this quite a bit because I think, especially when you think about the YRP card giving the 20% physical wide res, and this is a card you can combo with that. Great Sword and Gun are on both of those cards too.
Yep.
So there you get basically 20% mitigation against diamond AoEs, no matter what it is, if you main slot both of them. And I can see a compelling case to do that, especially if we get, maybe a good greatsword unit coming out here relatively soon. And I think even Thancred you see as a knight could potentially be used as a third for those missile units and kind of frontline for that team. And that is kind of a hole in the gun team that I've been finding at the moment, where Sodali comes in and limit bursts and is able to one tap in many cases those units. This wide res and Thancred's aura, for that matter, can stop that in its tracks. So
Absolutely.
I like that quite a bit.
I'm glad you shouted that out because you're right. That is something we've encountered frequently. It's just his limit break. He'll just walk up and limit break on him. And if he doesn't one-shot them from the damage on the limit break alone, he absolutely will at least get the follow-up that will bring them to re-raise. And at that point, they're on borrowed time, and you can lose the fight very quickly, no matter what. So yeah, this at least adds like a new element to the break point of how much damage they take. And Thancred, obviously, to your point, juices that up significantly. So yeah, I think this is an excellent card. If you're running gun teams, to me, it's a must pull in some capacity, where gun needs all of this extra love at the moment. But yeah, pretty solid.
I think even for greatsword players too, like Cloud obviously has been kind of pretty resilient. Like, he's never really like the best you can probably put out there, but I think he's usually at least competent and, no matter the meta. He specializes in that wide resistance.
Correct.
This getting him another 20% magic is pretty nice for him too, I think.
Absolutely. And someone actually asked that. They thought it was very interesting that the Cloud Vision card has the 60% attack, and so does in this one. And it's just a choice of which mitigations do you want. Clouds is a unit res attack, or unit res card. This one's a 20% magic wide res card. It's just two totally different types of resistances that change, and we always talk about like depends on your matchup. It's exactly what we mean. If you're going against a lot of unit, select 2 units, sure, the Cloud is going to be the kind of the must-have in the main slot. But if you're going against disorderly teams, and that's who you're targeting, this is going to be a stronger play for you. And so that's what we mean when we say purely matchup specific, that like these have value. It's not always one size fits all. It's kind of War Divisions in 2025 at this point. There's really no one glove that fits all. You have to kind of pick and choose some of these matchups.
And you can also look at like altering the card setup too. Like we did just get that Paine vision card that we talked about, which is a unit resist card for Greatsword. That could be your new main slot if you pulled this card and Cloud card goes to sub. Then you have 60% across both of your slots. You have unit resist across both of your slots.
Yep.
Kind of the pretty nice setup, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Son. Yeah, just going through some of the rest of the items here for our agenda. We do want to get to the tier list here shortly, but we got some really interesting things to talk about first. We did want to follow up briefly just on the LeBlanc event at the moment, where you have that option to get a select 64 recipe of a certain kind of item, and what we thought were some of the most valuable items, just as a general shout out, and just talking about the Gullwing suit as well, that you can get a +5 if you clear that nightmare stage. I know for the select ticket, I wish I had a visual for this. We didn't put it up, but I'll put this in here real quick. We do have a couple that we generally always will recommend to people, and I'll just hijack this for the sake of hijacking it. I think this is currently like our items to really look at if you haven't built them out already. This is typically UR raid gear. The Marshmallow Mini and the Alex Ring and the Winter Clothes, I think, are like my personal de facto top 3 that you still have to get. And even if you only have one copy, they're still worth having a second copy. I've run a handful of teams that obviously have like anywhere from 2 to 3 Alex Rings, or multi-evade teams that need 2 Winter Clothes. I don't think that's surprising at all. Anything else that sticks out to you for like, high demand UR gear from this event?
I think this pretty much sums it up. And, I threw some niche picks in there that if you have all those other things covered, if you have multiple marshmallows, multiple Alec, basically 2 of at least of those top 5, you can start maybe looking at some of this niche things as maybe getting a second copy or even a first copy if you didn't have one before. I think unfortunately with this event, there isn't the ability to farm a lot of the materials that you might need for some of these gear.
Yep.
And I've actually seen that question come about, how can I get some white sands, or how can I get X material? I think if you have built out some of the old raid gear that really at this point is just dead gear, like the platinum robe is like the key example that I give out to people. Like, I can't remember the last time that I even looked at using the platinum robe with its, unit resist. I don't even think it has unit. It has missile resistance and maybe HP or something.
Yep.
Yeah, like this is so bad.
Awful.
for the and I haven't used it since the first or second year of the game. It's been forever. So if you have this built up at a +5, dismantle it. You'll get the recipes back. You'll get a bunch of like white sands that you might be able to use for something else. But that same idea applies for other old raid gear that may not get much use these days. So you can always bank the recipes and maybe farm it on a raid revival later. But you might be able to build something more useful for the moment.
I agree totally. And just on these niche picks, I still think the Survival Vest is fine. I have not worn a Survival Vest in quite some time, though, once they introduced the amount of unit res pen they have currently. But still a recommended piece of gear to at least own if you don't have it yet and you're going down your checklist. I think Army Plate, valuable in its own right as well, just for the AoE wide res of both types. And I will give a special personal shout out to the Defense Bracer. I do think this is still a high quality piece of gear considering the meta that we're in. I do remember this being a very strong piece of gear back during like the ice meta of Eliza and Elia, where this has now been upgraded to give you 25% missile res for those 4 turns. This, to me, if you're going against those missile teams, is likely still a best in slot item just to cross the battlefield fast enough without dying.
Hmm.
They're not going to evade anything from you, and you may not need a bunch of damage to kill them because they're already kind of squishy on their own. All you need to do is survive getting over there, and I think this can help you accomplish that. But yeah, overall, I mean, the monocle, some people asked about here in terms of its value for the gunners. I've never used the monocle, and I don't think it's all that great. It looks fun on paper with the decreased AP on critical hit. There's been some copium builds that we've had where you accumulate a couple of these items on a unit that has an anti-AP specialty, and it works once in a while, but almost like 100% of the time you're better off going with something from like an Alex Ring or the Marshmallow for your status effects, or even just the Genji Glove for the extra damage, whatever it might be. This usually falls second fiddle to some degree.
I think it's something that could be used like outside of an evasion meta where you don't need Marshmallow or you don't need Alex.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a niche item. It's an interesting theory craft, but yeah, it's definitely low on the pecking order in terms of priorities.
Absolutely. And then just for the last comment on this, the Gullwing Prize garment. I think obviously if you're using this for Rikku primarily, the evade is a no-brainer, must. But I think you really just probably go in barrier for the other case. I don't think you have to overthink it all that much. I think if you're going to be using Yuna primarily, you're going to have to likely go for the barrier, where you're going to be using this for her range of 1. She's not going to really benefit from that extra evasion. Alternatively, if you are seeing a lot of Rikku play that you want to be using this on her in that instance, then obviously this goes the other way. So I think you can farm 2 of these, given the fact that you get a +5 from the Nightmare quest, and then you can acquire 63 recipes from the main shop in the Mog shop at the moment, so you can do 1 of each. But if you could only pick one, unfortunately, it just comes down to what unit you think you can use it on.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you get the +5 from the multiplayer version of the LeBlanc challenge, which is in the multiplayer only mode. So that you directly get the +5 as your first time completion, which is nice. I think it's randomized which one you get, but if it isn't one that you want to get, you can always dismantle and rebuild, and then you can get the version you want that way.
Yep.
So yeah, you can make two versions, including what's in the shop.
Yep. Nope, definitely. Yeah. But no, just wanted to bring some honorable mention to that. We hadn't really done any big videos on it, and we didn't really know ahead of time exactly how it was going to play out in global. So better to say it now than never, considering you have a week still, I think, to complete that event. So make sure you're doing so before it's over. But we do want to say, oh, go ahead.
But real quick before we move on, for people who have any prospect or hope of playing Yuna, that is absolutely a required item. So make that a priority to get it. The +1 range makes an extreme difference in her performance. So I would highly recommend grabbing that.
I'm glad you said that. That's a good shout out. This is one of those items that if you don't get it now, you'll likely not get it again until they rerun her. And so at this point, you've bricked your Yuna if you don't have that option in some cases.
Yep.
Nope, good call out. But we do have some JP news. A lot of JP news, more than just some JP news. They are rerunning Final Fantasy V, and they've introduced and teased 2 new units for that. There's obviously a load of vision cards as well, but the big unit they started off with, at least, and admittedly, we're not going to go terribly in depth on this tonight because there's still a lot to unpack and to analyze. We don't know the details of X-Death, who is the other one that's also announced, but they at least announced and gave the information on the Fire Gilgamesh, and we do have MA3s and limit break upgrades for Bartz and Lena and Faris as well. And again, we will revisit those 2 once we get closer to our own, but at least talking, I think, to the bigger bullet points of the collaboration, this was cool to see that they brought a new Fire Pierce unit. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, hoping they would do so, and my wish came true. I'm glad they picked Gilgamesh. We did kind of think it would be him based on the fact that he was the Trial of Reckoning enemy. They kind of keep that consistent where whoever was the enemy in the Trial of Reckoning, they will then be the next unit introduced when they rerun it. X-Death was really the surprise, though, that they came out with a entire second unit. And I'll pause there, yeah.
They haven't done that before
No.
for a rerun. It's always been like 1 unit with the rerun, maybe a vision card. This one, they're getting 2 units, 2 vision cards. So that's a good sign, I think, for like future rerun collaborations if they're going to be doing it a little bit extra. To be honest, I don't know why they haven't been the whole time, but Um, I think they've finally maybe gotten the message that the Final Fantasy properties are what bring people into the game and are what is propelling the game at this point, and so maybe they're just doubling down on it. I think we were just talking about like a significant fire pierce unit maybe just a week or two ago, like maybe even during like the special live stream last week.
Yep,
I think I threw more out there as maybe a
you
fire
did.
unit, but this one is gonna be it. He looks pretty good. I don't want to go too in depth on him now, but um, is it going to push like a spear meta? I don't think so quite yet. I think they still need something else, but I think it's definitely going to be nice like as a pair with Ramada, and I think he's pretty compelling as like a commander as well for them. It seems like he's relatively tanky, like got some good utility and damage that he can bring. So yeah, I think he's going to be pretty decent.
I agree. Yeah, he checks a lot of initial boxes for what I look for. At this point, it's also just looking to see what the damage values are. There's a lot of different ways that units do damage at this point, and until we see it in practice, these kits have become so complex it becomes harder to make a prediction based only looking at what they do here without seeing all the interactions at play of what gets sealed and not sealed and what's in range and not in range and how much does the map actually affect things and trying out bunches of different team synergies. And at this point it is a little more difficult than ever to, I think, make a conclusive choice. You obviously can have that checkbox, and I think he checks a lot of those boxes. I don't think he's going to take over the game, but I think he's a super solid fire pierce unit.
Yeah, it seems like he's kind of designed to go with Ramada and kind of be that next building block. So if that's your unit, then maybe this could be a good partner for her.
I agree, and yeah, we're not going to go into these at the moment, but they do have the vision cards that also came out for them, where there's a lot being put into this, almost borderline too much in some respects. Where we just talked about how much is coming out into the game, and now we're getting more, which could be worse. At least it's Final Fantasy related stuff.
Actually, a quick shout out to that second one there, the
Hmm,
bluer one. That this is like an interesting development for the Veritas stuff, where this is a Veritas vision card that you get from the Veritas medals. This one, I think, for ice and water is going to be like the main um, kind of jobs that it will cover. But it is a job vision card for bow, gun, katana, and devout. I think are the four jobs. So
yep.
more free vision cards, which again, even if it's not like top tier, it's a good to see. And actually, this card's not bad with HP and AOE res and stuff like that.
I'm a
So
fan. Yeah, anything they do for the Veritas units, I'm a fan of because they're so close. They're good units. The fact that they're giving them these little things to kind of keep them still, even if not the top of the line, one step behind top of the line, I think is a really good thing to them to continue to be doing. So yeah, big thumbs up
yep.
on that call out. But I know we don't have the details yet of X Death so far as I know. They might have given some teasers about some of the abilities. The big guy though that we'll get into now. Unfortunately, I don't have a graphic for this, JB. I don't know if they've released one either. Great Sword Mont was announced. I don't know if I'll see if I can find an image of him sometime soon. But they did announce that the new storyline Mont has a new outfit. He's got a new sword. He's part of the Great Sword team. That he will be their New Year's unit that's coming out here in JP. He is akin to Lucio the Luminous last year, where Lucio was the New Year's unit. And I know, JP, you brought this up, so I'm going to mention it, steal your thunder here, that we did not get a simultaneous release of Lucio last year. Sometimes we do for some of these units, but Lucio was not. And I don't think we're expecting Mont to be either. I think we're expecting Mont to be part of the regular schedule. And I'm seeing it, and now that people are saying the trailer is out for Mont, I've not seen it myself, but
Yeah, he'll be out in 2 days in JP, so we'll be able to kind of see the details pretty soon. We do know he's obviously he's going to be a commander, and he's got basically he's going to be the new like the first next generation tank is kind of he's obviously we've had Agrius and there was Thancred as well, but they're not really next gen. They're very close, but they're not on the same level as like the latest and greatest units. Mont is going to be that. He's got some aura effects. He's even got like a basically like a thorns effect where he reflects some of the physical damage back
That's
at the
right.
attackers, which is a first for that. We haven't seen that on any unit ever in the game. So that's kind of a cool new mechanic that's coming in with him. And I think that I did read that he has a disable based limit burst, disable ailment attached to it. So um, I think that's is going to be a significant unit. We'll find out more here in a couple of days, but greatsword fans rejoice.
Absolutely. I'm very excited for that. I do still see Greatsword as one of the classes that still has the potential, but without the right love, they would keep falling disproportionate to some of the other classes. Like June has obviously shown some of her age. Cloud is still very solid, but also he can't do it by himself. You need other stuff in there. Veritas of the Dark we've not really had yet. We're still waiting on those upgrades. And Paine, obviously, we know is like kind of a role player that supplanted A2 in that lower cost sense. But I think bringing Mont in here to really solidify not only Greatsword, but Greatsword's rainbow opportunities too, where Greatsword does have a lot of very well rounded vision cards that I think Mont can be a huge upgrade not only to the Greatsword team, but all of those other rainbow teams that need a tank and the light element in general. He is a light unit, so there's teams here of mono light that I think are still rather compelling, particularly when you factor in the fact that I think they have a clear advantage over dark. I don't think you really have any kind of apple or it's apples to oranges right now how good they are compared to each other. That I think you can make a much stronger light team than you could any kind of dark team.
Oh, not even close.
Yeah,
Not even. I mean, they have Seeper is really, the probably the best of the bunch here. So I mean, there's probably more coming for Dark further down the road, but Light I think is kind of the top dog of those two elements at the moment.
yeah.
You mentioned like the overlap of Greatsword and other jobs. Black Mage I think and Warrior are probably two of the most significant ones for Greatsword. So Gun is kind of getting in the mix there as well with some of these new cards. So I think he's going to be he should be a meta changing unit. We'll see. The devil's in the details, but he definitely has the lore impact. Like the fans, of this character are there, and I think like the job presence is all the recipes, all the ingredients for that recipe I think are there.
Right. And actually, I'm glad people in chat are pointing this out. X Death is a dark unit. So we are technically
Yes.
getting a good new dark unit. So there's a little bit of an equilibrium there, but I still think dark needs a little bit more than that. To answer the question, is Paine worth building now that Mont is being announced? I don't think we can answer that because we just don't know his kit well enough yet. And honestly, I think if you're still deciding on who's the best three of the Great Sword, debatable whether Paine is the third unit or not. It's still always matchup dependent, but I think you could make cases for Cloud and then Dark Veritas, or Cloud and Joom, or Cloud and a support. I think there's a lot of different ways you could take that team. So I wouldn't count Paine out. I think she, rising tides makes all boats float higher. So I think she's going to get relatively better with Mont in the fold, but I think it's too early to say whether or not she's a direct benefactor.
I think when you said about her as a role player, I think that's spot on. I think that her key thing that she brings is the Hastiga.
Yep.
And, I think that we'll probably at some point we'll probably see some nice Hastiga strats involving her and Mont and whoever. I'm sure that could happen. Um, is is it absolutely necessary? Probably not, but she is a free get, and there is still 20 days left to kind of get Chocobo and Barrack shards for her, so I don't think it's like a huge lift to keep building her.
Definitely, definitely. But that's basically what we wanted to get through for new content. Again, we're going to revisit almost all of this again next week, just to a different level of depth. But we wanted to still reserve at least half an hour here to get through our tier list, which I think is one of the more exciting things to talk about, because what triggered this was the fact that Asaruto had announced his new tier list, and this was being passed around on the subreddit and the discords and whatnot. And we've always had some disagreements with the JP meta and tier lists, sometimes in how high or low they value certain units. And oftentimes, let me just say this too, anytime you do a tier list, there's a bunch of asterisks on it in terms of what game mode are you talking about, what level of player are you talking about, like what level of like matchups in terms of, are you looking for a guild war specifically, or are you looking for just like class match? Are you looking for PvE content? Are you going for high scores anywhere? So there's a million ways you can always discount a tier list, but I thought this would be a fun chance for do ours for the end of the year.
Yeah.
This is his that we're looking at right now. I know myself, I have certain disagreements about it, but we're not here to pick apart another person's tier list. We're here to make our own and maybe voice why we think some things are different. But
Yeah, I'm sure it's true for their meta as it's developed, but as you said, there is some differences that have always been present in our game compared to theirs, and multiple factors for that, right? We may pull differently than they do. That's all. That's definitely a factor because, pull rates and use rates dictate at least some portion of the meta.
yep,
And then you think about like just stuff like global exclusive units and cards is a factor, but especially like limited bestowed abilities add certain elements to units that they can't build in JP, and that does have its own effects as well.
absolutely right. And they've always built different. Even their top 10 is a little bit different than our top 10. They don't really have a true like top 10 guild war system. It's really like one guild that like runs the table, and the other ones kind of like fall behind in order. So even then, like their trickle down effect isn't exactly the same as ours. Their content creators obviously may focus on different units too, that to your point, maybe they get pulled at different frequencies. So there's a lot of things that may be true for JP, maybe less true for us for a variety of factors, but it's not going to stop us from doing it anyway.
Yeah.
What you guys are seeing here on the screen is our last tier list. At this point, surprisingly, well over a month ago. I feel like we just did this yesterday. But one of the things
Yeah,
that
it's
we, right?
6 weeks ago.
Yeah. One of the things that we did determine last time was that even our D tier was getting a little full, and one of the things we needed to do soon was cull this list again a little bit. And the reason why we do this is because realistically, once you get to like anything below this like C or D tier, they're basically all equal in some regard. Like you're not getting a significant drop off of most of those units. So that if they didn't make the tier list, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're garbage or unusable. It's more just the fact that they're not good enough to differentiate themselves from the rest of the pool of units in that area. So just for the sake of cleaner visuals and more analytical discussion, we are a little harsher on who we end up dropping here in that D tier. And so most of these units with the orange arrows that you're seeing, we preliminarily just drop them down so that we can make some room here in the S, A, B, and C tiers to really differentiate a little more strategically of where these units should end up. I know we tend to prioritize Guild War oriented units just because that's the most like prevalent and active gameplay for the majority of the player base, but I think overall this is still relatively true, or can be true, for other kinds of PvP content. Not in all kinds of cases, and it obviously skews a little heavy toward auto PvP in particular. We try to give some honorable shoutouts for the manual units that still, buck the trend. But yeah, I think it's my kind of preamble. Anything else you want to add on here?
I don't think so. So, I mean, we kind of, because of that significant culling, we're going to have more room to kind of stratify those top tiers and kind of get a little bit more granular with where they're at, because it feels like we have maybe a little bit too many clumped together in SNA, where there's definitely some differentiation points I think there that we could make.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, we can get at least kick things off with, I think, some of the units that have gotten recent upgrades. We can move them up and down, and then we can go to the new units, and then we can kind of just like roughly eyeball and talk through some of it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So then on that note, Bridal Elia, who did get one of the MA3s as of late, is one of these units that has done very well. I personally... Oh, let me say one other thing, guys. I'm so sorry. We do this a little bit differently. We typically work top down, like where we'll look at like S, A, B, C, D. And I've always preferred that. I know it's more climactic to build up to the S tier to see like the grand reveal of who the best are. But to me, your S tier always dictates everything underneath it. And so if you don't pre-establish that S tier, I feel like it doesn't always make a lot of sense to work down, because you're always like comparing to the S tier as the bar. So I actually just had a thought. Is there anything we want to do preliminarily to like our S and A tier, or should we just jump right into the upgrades, do you think? Is there any units here stand out at S tier that we should move up or down just to kick things off?
Well, I think it's going to be like a debate, right? Because I think that there's a couple on the line when you look at maybe like Gilgamesh and Sephiroth potentially as maybe it could be time for them to move down. But yeah, I
We'll,
think that
okay, we'll get there then.
it's a just yeah.
All right, I like it. So I mean, so me personally, I'm leaving Elia in B. I think Bright Elia is still excellent. Um, she's the best strike unit in the game. She's a very competitive lightning unit. I have no problem leaving her here.
Yeah, I think it's just not a good meta condition for her at the moment, where it's Sodali is still one of the most played units. But aside from that, I think that she's gotten some nice upgrades. So I think she holds B for me.
I would agree. Soul is a little more debatable. I think Soul could be C tier. He really does strike me as like a very anti Gilgamesh niche. I have not seen you Soul in a little while, and although he has good upgrades in the vision cards, have really benefited him. I don't think I've actually seen the play to justify it yet, but um,
I think what moves him down for me is evasion is around, which with the power creep is statistically it was hard enough to get him to be able to hit Lucio in the past, if he could do it at all. Now it's even harder with the power creep there. So C I think is probably more fitting for him.
I agree with that. Veritas of the Light is getting a limit break upgrade somewhat soon. They got their 140 also. Didn't give them the exact upgrades we were hoping for, but anything to say move them up or down quite yet? They're still kind of touch and go.
So I think the discussion for us is, do we kind of leave B as our default for the Veritas units? Do we still feel comfortable for that? Because I feel like she's kind of in a similar plane as the other Veritas units. And
I
that's
agree.
kind of a tough. And do we want to lump them all together? Do we just say that because you're a Veritas, you're automatically B? I would argue no.
I would agree with you. I
Um,
would agree with you.
I think that there is even some differentiation we can make between them at this point. I think with gun where it's at, with light where it's at, and where it's going with potentially Mont, and still some upgrades to come with the limit bursts potentially, and a weapon for her. I feel like B is probably good. I think the only thing that I don't love about her is her range is not what I'd like to see for a gun unit, and her accuracy is also pretty rough as well.
Yep.
Other than that, I think she's actually pretty solid. Been using her a lot in free match recently because I just 140'd her a few days ago
Nice.
um, with the gun team, and she actually frontlines fairly well and can take some hits with her barrier and stuff from even from Sonali. So I think B is okay for her. I think I'm comfortable with that.
I agree. What about Bolt Veritas then? This unit had some upgrades. This is one of the few Veritas units I think I would move down personally. Um, it's a solid bow unit overall, but just way too squishy in my opinion. I've not seen them benefit from this missile meta that has been more gun oriented than bow oriented. And unless lightning comes in and really elevates that element and Earth kind of goes away entirely, I don't see a lot of opportunities for the Bolt Veritas.
I think her going to C for me right now is purely team building oriented.
Yep.
Where I think the kid is good enough to go to B, but there's just not. Yeah, light. I mean, mono lightning is really it, right? There's no bow team, so yeah, I think C works for her.
Agreed. And yeah, and guys in chat too, we are going to still go through this. This is not final. Just because they don't have arrows doesn't mean they're going to stay there necessarily. I think we'll still like to move around a couple people around maybe, but
Yeah.
yeah. The Wind Veritas got new upgrades. I am very happy with him in B. I haven't tested him enough to be an A, but I'm very happy with him in B. He should be here.
Yeah, I mean, if he hadn't got those upgrades, I think that we should push him to C, but I think that the upgrades were good enough that, maybe with the Gilgamesh coming in as, an upgrade for the spear team, maybe he could be a very nice third for that like elemental triangle, lightning, wind, fire. Seems kind of interesting. So yeah, I think he could be a role player for spear or for mono wind. So I like that.
I like it. What about Melnia? She did get I think the limit break upgrade, which we didn't love. Was fair. At this point in the game, I'm comfortable putting her in I think even D myself. I have not played her enough with the gun units, and if there was ever a time, it's now. If you know what I mean. She's in a good element that's got, you know, she's fine. I just don't know if I've seen the results as of late.
Yeah, I think she would have gone down to D with the culling, but she had the upgrade, so I kind of put her in her place. But yeah, D I think is where she belongs.
Yeah, I'm cool with that for now. And again, we'll revisit this too. And the Lightning Astraeus had some MA2 upgrades that were fairly decent. I personally, I'm not a big fan of this unit anymore. And his MA2 was too dependent upon his second buff, which is always at risk to be used, that I think he's just too inconsistent. The inconsistency
Mm.
for me is what makes me round down.
I think that the upgrade was good enough for me that he stays in C. Like I think that his caliber is like, similar to Soul. And when I look at a lot of the units in D, I think that
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
he's probably better than many of them.
Nope, good call out. I'll give you that. And I'll kind of rearrange some of this. And yeah, and then the Isolai, who got her MA3, I think she's fine in D. I think to me, if she's playable right now, it's just as a fun triple gunner team that maybe catch someone off guard, but I don't think the actual quality of this unit has gone up at all.
Yeah, I think it's a fun arena play. I think that like with Jayden and like it's kind of nice for like the double chaining that they can do with with ice and missile. And she does have the barrier break, which is something that they need in that team. I don't think it's good enough for me to go to C, but I think that it's borderline. It's debatable at least.
I agree. And then our cost, we threw Gurns back in here. Same idea. He got an upgrade. I don't like his upgrade at all personally. This is even still a tough cost justification for me, but I think it's okay here. I mean, if I'm seeing Winter Ravias and Griffith here, I think Gurns back is fine here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't get good enough upgrades to move into D, so yeah, just like a cost asterisk for him.
Definitely. Definitely. So okay.
I did want to make a case for unit to move out of C into B though, and I'm gonna make a case for Ramza to move into B.
I
I
won't
think
argue that.
that like maybe not necessarily for like Guild War. We haven't maybe seen that as much, at least in the top 10. I definitely he's been being played outside of that, but I think for, other PvP modes like Grand Arena, where he was a top finisher or used in the top teams there, and for class match, he was used on the #1 class match manual team. So, shout out for like some versatility that he brings to the table. So, I think B is a good spot for him.
Agreed. Okay, so then at this point, do you want to just go through the ranks and start to move some people, or do you want to do the new units in particular first? How do you think we should approach that?
Do we want to like point out other units from A and B that we want to move down
I'm okay with that.
first?
Yeah, yeah. Because there's a
Okay.
couple that I think clearly stick out. I'm going to make the vote. I think Sunil should be a C tier unit.
Yes.
I don't think she's B tier. Her not having a null sure hit hurts her a heck of a lot. And even Lucio, Halloween Lucio, was borderline C for me. I think he suffers against all of the top meta in what we're seeing too. That I want to
Yeah,
round
I
up,
think the
but yeah,
the predominant like Earth evasion team, or at least that we've been seeing in the top end of the game, has been Mont, Rikku, and Sadali, not Lucio. And I think that his problem basically since Gilgamesh has come out is that Gilgamesh can one shot him, and Gilgamesh is still one of the top units being played. So um, that hurts him significantly. I think his damage doesn't feel as good as it used to either. So I'd be okay with him in C, to be honest.
okay. I know it sounds it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to see it because I know in a lot of casual ranks and lower guild he still is a very compelling unit. But when you stress test it against what we have currently, against well built teams, he does tend to struggle more than he had historically. Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I think there's a couple of Veritas units that I would want to put down and see also personally. I do think Fire Veritas at this point is worthy of a C tier. He's got a really great anti slash angle that worked actually pretty well a couple months ago. Not nearly as good now. It's fine, but I don't think it's got a lot of upside.
I would move water
I would
down as
too.
well.
Yep.
I think that like we're in a magic meta, and she hasn't been good. The kit's not good enough to hack it. Unfortunately, the damage not good enough to hack it either. She we had a lot of copium for her kind of during the black mage meta when she first was kind of announced, and then oh, she's got like the perfect ailment resistances and things like that, but just never came to fruition. Even with like the massive power creep and devout cards, the damage still doesn't feel that all that great either. So I'm gonna make a move also for Duran to go to C,
I'm cool with that.
and for Bradley definitely to go to C.
I'll also cool with that.
Um, A2 is borderline for me. I think that she is better than Bradley. She's surprised me a lot in a lot of cases, but I wouldn't argue it if you thought she should go to C as well.
It hurts, but I think it should because I know there's units in A that I want to bump down, and I think A2 is below those units in A that I want to bump down.
Okay.
I think there's enough fire prevalence, and even like the greatsword teams have subsided enough. She's still super quality play, but I think she's more akin to the C tier units that we're not saying they're bad. There's just less and less opportunities to be used, but they still have value if used properly.
I would put Raph there as well.
I'd agree with that. Raph's really solid tank still. I still like what they've done with her, but it's just not as every single match guaranteed what she can deliver. And Mace has not aged well from a job-based vision card perspective.
So Mantis said Fire Veritas worked against Greg, and that's what Will was talking about a couple months ago when, kind of in that slash meta we were with Gilgaroth. He was a good play then.
Absolutely.
Not absolutely a terrible play right now.
Yeah, too much magic, and Exia just destroys him.
Absolutely.
Yep. I think from the B tier, I think Eld and Glassy are borderline because of the meta conditions. I know that's weird for me to bump Summer Glassy down, but she's not doing well right now, and I don't see a lot of upside for her in the near-term future. She did get a great limit break upgrade that can help with some of the defense, some of the evade meta, but even those evade units aren't like super high defense pen units that her defense pen reduction niche, I don't think affects them necessarily the same. She does have the accuracy aura though, so on the other hand, I still want to keep her in B, even though we're kind of in a magic meta where she can't really do much. I'm really borderline on her and Eld in that B tier.
I would move Eld down before Glassy because I think the interesting thing about Glassy is not only the accuracy but the physical damage reduction. It's just that we haven't had as much of a need for it at the moment, and like Red Mage is on a little bit of a downswing at the moment too. So I think that like just her specific niche is strong enough that it's at least debatable that she stays in B,
I agree.
and because it's our tier list, I think that she stays.
That works. We like her, so she stays.
Yeah.
I think there's interesting cases to be made for Halloween Elia and and Lilith, regular Lilith, whether or not they're B caliber or C caliber. I've seen times where they look really good. I've seen times where they feel like 70 cost units. I don't know if they're more compelling plays than the C tier units, but in my bones, I feel like they're not exactly the same as some of the B tier units. I don't know if we want to revisit them after we place a couple of these units, but they seem like they could be the next candidates too.
For me, Lilith, like when I compare her to Nucio or Lucio the Luminescent,
Yep.
she's better, like
That's a
in
good
almost
point.
every single way.
Good point.
So that's like the comparable for her there. And then like the comparable for Halaya is what it would be Black Rose. And I think she's better than Black Rose right now. I think she's more playable, to be honest.
That's
Even
fair.
though like it's not the best, but
I like
I
it.
think that they're good enough for B, to be honest.
Nope. Good comparison. I like that. Okay. All right. And then I'm comfortable with the rest of these B tier units at the moment. I don't think any of them have a strong case to go up at this very moment. But yeah.
So like for the other Veritas units, we didn't talk about Earth or Ice. And I think like just because of the medic, like Ice is still in a strong place, Earth is in a strong place, Katana is in a good place, so I think that's why he stays. And then Veritas of the Earth, I think, has been one of the better all-around tanks.
Yeah.
And I've been seeing him used quite a bit with Rikku actually to kind of frontline for her.
Nope. Absolutely so. I know, kind of looking up now at the A tier, one of the first units we've been wanting to move down was, I think, Angela if I'm being real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, not the worst unit, but not on the tier of what our A tier should be. And I think Kadaj has been in that conversation too. Is he also down in that B tier finally? Yeah,
I think Kadaj moves down. Yeah.
he was the benefactor for a while of the katana power creep, of the just general power creep of the game. He was one of the first few units, and so he was good because he was new, not because he was actually good. And I think at this point you're kind of seeing that come to fruition. That still a quality unit, but down in that B tier. I don't know if there's anyone else in this A tier currently that I would drop down. Who comes to mind for you?
Maybe Fina.
Oh, I'll give you that.
But
I'll give Fina. Really,
I mean,
really solid support, but she loses almost every single time to Seal and Summer Resnick. She's almost never the superior choice.
yeah. And I've been finding like in the gun meta, like she struggles. She's been struggling a bit more too, just because of the range factor. Where she just has like the 2 hits of her barrier, and then she's kind of toast after that.
Yep.
I don't know. Like I don't know if it's two. Is it 2 tiers away from Lucio and Summer Resnick though?
I think so. She had a really hard like anti-curse niche initially that we just don't really need as much of anymore. And her healing with
And her anti-curse niche was not the best one,
right,
either.
right,
So
right.
yeah.
I just haven't seen her. I haven't seen her anywhere in the top 10, quite frankly, that enough to justify her being closer up.
Yeah, I've just seen her in a couple of light teams, like with Cloud and Yuna, and that's about it.
Right, which is fine, and that's a solid team, but I don't think that's a top. Yeah,
Yeah, I think gun to my head B is where she probably belongs.
I like it. I like it. We can always move to. I think the rest of the units are okay. I know last time we did this, we thought Mont also could be coming down because Mont was in a really poor spot with the amount of wind that was starting to come out. Mont seemingly is held up pretty well, though. He has holes, but he's holding up as well as ever. Enough so that I don't know if I want to bump him down to B. I think he's okay in A.
I think so too. I think there's other units that are maybe borderline. Like it might be time to start talking about Joom or maybe even Crimson Wizard potentially. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but
It's close.
it's close that it's at least a debate.
Yep.
I think that they're okay enough for right now, but it's probably coming soon.
If anyone, I think Seifer might be one of the ones that I'm considering too. It's been enough time that if he was going to make a resurgence by now, I think you would have felt it a little bit more. But I don't even see the theory crafting around for him like we used to.
Mm. Yeah,
Actually, I would be comfortable with that. I would be comfortable with Seifer and B. Maybe it's too early.
I was just gonna say, like, if he doesn't have like a good resurgence with Mont and Exdeath, which are like prime partners coming in of Great Sword and Black Mage, which are perfect pairings for him, not to mention like the elemental thing, then he absolutely should go to B.
Do we drop him then? Because that's a month away. We're talking about like future units hoping to salvage him.
Mm. For today, I think B is probably fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, the current state of the game.
He's probably the best unit in B by a margin, but yeah, I think based on like use rates and like results, I haven't seen many people using him as of late.
Definitely. Okay. S tier. Anyone we want to drop? I have an opinion of one I want to drop. Which is crazy because we've not seen this lately. I think Sephiroth is A tier. I don't think Sephiroth is S tier. There's been, for those of you that have been monitoring the top 10, a resurgence of Sephiroth and Shrek as of late. It's very beatable, though. A lot of that was purely based on the fact that initially, some of the walls that people were running, they were running the high evade Sephiroth again, and no one was really ready with the curse resistance because people had dropped it entirely. And then everyone figured it out, and now that team is beatable by everything that we're trying again. Like, it was purely just a timing factor that Guild started to run them to kind of catch people off guard. But it's not because it was objectively the best meta. And honestly, I do think there was a factor of it being like holidays, that people aren't like actively playing every single day and testing everything. I don't think Sephiroth is the S tier anymore. He can be if you're not prepping at all. But I think that team is still very beatable by most things in the S and A tier.
I would agree with that because I think that's I mean we we've I had a whole video where I put out like 10 or 12 different teams that beat that exact team that's being played again by a lot of the top guilds at the moment. Um, but yeah, I agree that it maybe more of a timing thing, maybe kind of more of a meta condition thing why it came back a little bit. But I don't think that he's even like I think it's a combination of those three units, not necessarily that he's like the main carry of the team that's causing it.
Yep.
So I think a top of A is probably better for him for where he's at in the game.
I agree. Do you think Gilgamesh also stays in S, or do you think he's also an A tier unit?
Yeah. Gilgamesh is a tough one because that Valeria team, like it's kind of like cheese in a way because I feel like if you don't have a specific setup or like certain timing, it absolutely roasts like just about everything that you send at it. If you're not able to get rid of like the follow-ups or if you don't have range damage to kind of take one of them out quickly, you just get absolutely blasted off the map by it. So I think because of that, it's and because a specific guild has basically lived off that team in the top 10 and beaten our guilds multiple times with it. I think that he probably still stays,
I'm okay with that. I'm
but
okay
he's
with that.
borderline.
He's
He's definitely
borderline.
borderline.
He's
So
he's showing cracks, but he's still a very competitive meta unit for a variety of different teams. Like to me again, this S tier should be the units that make every other team play around. If you can get beat by a majority of things, you should not be in the S tier. That doesn't mean that you can't beat S tier units. You certainly can beat these people up here, and
yeah,
we see that routinely. But I think this should be more of an indication of like who is driving the trickle down effect of everything else. And I think Gilgamesh is still one of those units. Sephiroth is too. When you're not prepping at all for him, he will one man army destroy your entire team. But with the right kind of counterplay that exists in S tier, even you can still beat that.
I think Gilgamesh has gotten a little bit of life here too with Jayden and the gun team.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that gives him a little bit of bonus points recently.
Is TG Sid still an A tier unit?
I was just thinking that same. I was literally just about to say that,
I love it. I don't know. I don't know
and
if he is.
it's really tough for me because his utility is so strong. The it's literally like some of the barrier break, courage removal, slash imperil, CT down, CT nullification. Like there's so much good things there. It's hard for me not. I think that he's better than Jum for me in many matchups. He's better than. I think he's even better than Ramada in a lot of cases for me, like in terms of the
Uh,
value that he can bring to your team.
we'll keep him there. We'll keep him there then.
I think it's a debate though. Like
Yeah.
I
But
think because
but if that's a debate, I think then it's a debate whether Ramada or Joom should be there too. If it's a debate for all of them for various reasons, but all three of them have still kind of held up. But I do agree that like Joom is probably below him. I think functionally speaking.
yeah,
Well, that's the whole point. We tried to segregate these because we wanted to avoid this. We wanted to be able to like, you know, layer them a
yeah.
little more methodically. You know what? We'll probably figure it out once we add these new units. Let's, given that we're at an hour and a half, let's add in these new units. Maybe that picture will get a little more clearer for us as we reshape the meta. And so, the Dark
Yeah.
Veritas unit, I do want to kick off in the B tier. He's not complete, but I think he looks like a B tier unit at the minimum right now. He looks really good.
I think so too. I mean, he has two very compelling seals with barrier and dispel seal, right? So yeah, I think we've started kind of because we have some other Veritas units still there, and he looks to be like one of the best ones once he gets everything. I think that's a good spot for him.
I agree. Nichol, I think, is a B tier unit. I think Nichol's better than all the C tier units. Nichol's got all the modern stuff that I look for. He's got the offensive potential. He's got the team building. Book has benefited a lot from a lot of these recent vision cards. Water with him and Exia can do okay. I don't think he's in that C tier. Where this to me is clearly like previous gen units that are really good but have fallen because they're previous gen.
I think he's a really good debuffer. Um, if Halaya is there, I think Nichol should be there. I think yeah, I think that's a good spot for him.
I like it. What about Jayden? This is going to be the tough one, I think. Um, there's a case to be made why Jayden could be S, but I think Jayden's A. I he gets beat by enough in the S tier that I think he's A. He can beat a whole bunch of things when you're not prepped for it, but he struggles mightily in a lot of these S tier matchups, which to me means that he's not the one driving it. They are. Yeah.
I think that goes back to where we were saying earlier, where we still feel like Gun is needs a little bit more to push them over the line. So I think A is a good spot for him. He's able. I think it's kind of a similar thing we said about Crimson Wizard, like a couple last time maybe we did this, where Crimson Wizard can beat many of the units in S,
Right.
but he can also lose to them too. So it's not like a clear cut thing. So I think Jayden's in a similar boat.
Does that automatically put Yuna in A as well, since they are kind of joined at the hip? Or is Yuna technically a step above him and goes to the S tier? It's a tough
I
one.
think I need more time with Yuna with the Gull Wingsuit to see if it's there for me. I think out of the two, she is the clearer cut S tier because she elevates the team more with her buffs. Jayden is just a cannon, like he's just doing damage. It's literally can do nothing else, and it's frustrating me because of that. Yuna is who brings the ceiling and the CT null and the follow up and the element resistance and all these different things. So um, despite that, though, I think performance wise, I think she's been A so far.
I think I'm going to do that too. It's purely just based off where they're shining, and it's just not consistent enough. This was the map too. This map looked really favorable for them, and we've seen that the Sottily Exia like Quicken combination can still destroy them. Sottily can still basically one shot both of them when not done properly. You can still mess up the timing of the CT seal and whatnot. They're really strong, but I don't know if it's the S tier.
Yeah, I mean, and for folks, we have had situations like this in the past. Sottily for a little while we had on the A tier, and once Exia came in, once new vision cards came in, he elevated, and he's been probably one of the, if not the best units in the game the last couple months. So there's still time for the gun team. I think that there's still more coming for them. Who knows what Mont could potentially do for that team? So, there could be a move to A tier or S tier in the future for them.
Yeah. Can we pause for a second? Because Reginald Mayer just brought up a good comment. Sorry, guys, but Shurecca is a hard A. Jayden one shots her, and so he's either an S or she's an A, one or the other. This is a good one to talk about. Shurecca, you're not wrong. Jayden dominates her. Shurecca still though is a key player in that Gilgamesh team, which is still very good for the follow ups. She's still a key player in mono win teams. There's some variations out of it. There's been an under the radar, I think, an enormous uptick, and we've not mentioned him tonight. The Dario win teams have been dominatingly good against a lot of the meta, and Shurecca is one of those units in that Dario team where you run Dario, Resnick, Shurecca, and she's done so well against Rikku, she single-handedly shuts down almost all of those Earth teams with someone like Dario. That to me is what keeps Shurecca in the S tier. Is that sure Jayden can one tap her? You can make that same argument about a whole bunch of different units here in the top S and A, but she's got so much other application. She's absolutely still an S.
Yeah, I mean, there's cases where Shurecca one shots Sottily or definitely one shots Rikku, or I mean, that's just the elemental advantage. I would make an argument that Shurecca is the best unit in the game
I would
at the
agree.
moment. Um, she can light up Gilgamesh. She can one shot Gilgamesh.
You're right.
That
Right.
is absolutely. She is absolutely one shot my maxed out Gilgamesh many times. Um, so I don't think that that's just because one unit in the game is able to one tap her. Um, Gilgamesh actually can as well. Depending on if he can get in close enough. But that's the problem. So She's absolutely an S tier unit. There's no doubt in my mind.
I agree with that. And sorry, I was just keeping motive stats handy, just in case we needed a visual of something to get an idea. Yeah, on offense, you're still seeing her as the second highest picked unit because she deals with everything exceptionally well. On defense, you've seen Dario there at the bottom too. That was one of my biggest disagreements when I saw this tier list of Asurutos, that he had Dario in the SS tier. That I thought they're missing something that we're taking advantage of.
Yeah.
Okay, Paine for me is automatic B. I can't see being higher than that at the moment.
I think B is a good starting spot for her. Well, we'll have to see. Like, if she doesn't get elevated by some of the new stuff coming, XDef, Mont coming in, if she doesn't get elevated into that conversation, I could see her maybe even potentially going to C. But I think for now, B is good.
Yeah, I love the debate in chat. No. BG Maxi, JB just said it too. Yeah, Shrek can absolutely one shot Gilg. It happens more often than you would think in the top end of the game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is Rikku an S tier or is she down in the A tier?
I think Rikku is an S tier. I think she sets the bar for me for this next generation evasion archetype. Um, but I still think that team is lacking something. But that the Mono Earth evasion team is incredible. It's very well rounded with its damage. It can beat Mono Wind. I've seen it many times. If the Wind team is built correctly, though, it's very hard for them to overcome it, and they will lose absolutely. But I think it's a phenomenal team. I think that she has like the status effect angle. I think that I think she's a S caliber for me.
I agree. That team still needs some more work, and it's only going to get better from here, in my opinion. But she's still effective enough in a variety of different compositions that I think she's more. Again, at the end of the day, for me, a lot of the differences in the S and the A comes down to like consistency, where I just need to know exactly what I'm getting most of the time. If I have a unit who's either amazing or absolute useless, to me that's like an automatically you can't be S tier. Like you can't have that wide of a ceiling and floor. And Riku's floor is still a pretty high floor. At the end of the day, she's still a very annoying unit to go up against. She's got some great move and jump so that she can disrupt your turn order pretty easily. Obviously, she can bait your attacks very easily with that evade angle. It's only going to get better. I do think, obviously, a little unbalanced being in the mono earth, and we don't see that used in defense as much in the top end of the game because there is enough wind that can counteract it. That's just build 101, but you have to account for it. Every single one of our builds now has some kind of element of accuracy to it, either going from like mid-tier accuracy to literal top-tier accuracy trust stones on the right side, luck on the left side, luck vision cards in both slots, just because you absolutely have to account for that at any given time. That, to me, is what determines the trickle-down effect. When we say someone has a trickle-down effect, that's the trickle-down effect. She makes it so that everyone under has to account for it.
I think that's the key factor, and I think some people are saying, Rikku should be A tier, just like Yuna and Jayden. No, not everyone in the game or in the top 10 right now has to account for missile damage. Maybe that will happen eventually, but they can get around it in other ways. You can't get around the accuracy hard check of Rikku and the evasion team unless you gear for it.
Yep.
And everybody is because of that. And that pure fundamental building change that has happened because of her presence in the game, I think makes the case for her that she belongs there.
I agree. That to me is what the S tier means. It means that they're the one that drive the decision making of everyone underneath them. Yep. Yeah. Winter Perrene, where does she end up? I have mixed feelings on her because I think in the broad scheme of the game she's a B, but I think given the presence of Sadali and Rikku, I'm okay leaving her an A at the moment, which sounds weird, but she's got such a great counter presence to both of them. I've seen it on multiple occasions. She's not a great unit. This is purely a meta condition for me, but I don't believe that strongly in it. She is not as good of a unit as the unit in the A tier by any stretch of the imagination. But for people that are going really hard into Sadali Rikku teams, I think she's a solid role player, but I'd be comfortable with her in B also. I don't believe strongly one way or the other.
For me, as a unit, she is probably B caliber
I
because
agree.
it's very niche.
Yeah.
I will consider A tier if you are factoring in commander ability because that commander ability uh for is for guild battle, which is kind of, this list is, it considers all PvP, but I think guild battle is pretty significant portion of it. And uh one of the predominant or a few of the predominant teams being played right now, Mono Wind, Katana, she has a significant guild battle effect for Shrek, and I think it's almost like adding a whole nother unit or buff to that team. So I think A for now, while that team is top dog, is probably fine.
I have no doubt she's going to drop the next time we do this tier list. I don't want to
Yeah.
mislead people with that. She's not like an A tier caliber unit. It's purely a meta condition of what else exists in the S tier. When you talk about covering your Earth bases, your accuracy bases, like she can do it, and the commander ability certainly rounds up as well.
I think there's
Yeah.
short legs on that because once that team falls out of favor and that, but on the other hand, her commander ability does affect Black Mage, which X Death, if he becomes a significant unit, she could still be in play there too. So
Yep.
I could go either way.
Totally. I think it's too early for Venera for me. It seems unlikely I would put her anywhere than S, considering Riku's an S. When you think them being kind of tied at the hip. But do we hold off on Venera? Do you want to place her preliminarily?
I was gonna say preliminarily A, but
I'm fine with that.
obviously that I think we don't fully know that yet,
Yep.
but I think A is probably her floor.
Yep. Which then brings us to some of the more easier units to I think place. Ketone. Is she? I think she's on this tier list. It's a
Yes,
question for.
previously not on the list,
Yeah.
but she got the MA3.
I might go as high saying a C tier unit. It seems that's the ceiling for me though. I think D is probably a more comfortable spot considering how we're overall ranking these units. Um, yeah.
I had a pretty nasty team with Catone that was raking. It's hard for me to say C, but I agree that that's her ceiling. I think it's at least debatable. It's between D or C.
Is she better than Lucio? That's the bar,
She
right?
can't she can't do as much damage as him, but she's comparable in evasion,
Is
and she
she
does have guaranteed hit null
is she
on
be,
the
is she
limit
better than
burst.
Yuffie? We got
I don't.
Lucio in C and Yuffie in D, so that's some pretty good bars.
Yeah, I think she's in D for me.
Okay. I take your word for it because those of you guys in chat wondering, yours is max reincarnated. So you're also
Yes.
taking like the best ketone possible and stress testing her here.
Yeah, I mean, she can do like some nice things for Rikku with like the debilitator move that she has, and she has the stop. But a lot of people with Agrius around are trust owning stop, which kind of cuts into that. And her damage isn't really anything to write home about. Although Sadali's buff has Human Killer, which her Drain Force can pop off with that buff. It's not a good ability though, just because of the range height. So that's kind of the problem with it.
Good pros and cons. I like it. Helena to me still doesn't make this list. I don't even think she's a D tier unit personally.
I agree. Yeah, it doesn't. It's nice upgrades, but I don't think she's quite on the caliber of what we have in D.
Yep. Starlight Elena I think is worthy of a D.
I think so. She got a guaranteed hit nullification, still like one of the more evasive units in the game. Can do a little bit of damage, I think, with the unit pen that she got. So I think comparable to some of the stuff in D now.
Yeah, I worry about because she's so unit oriented. How quickly can she actually kill things? It's
Right.
fair. Yeah.
And her HP is still like she's so one shottable that it's not funny. So
Yep.
that's kind of where she lives now.
Yep. Do we make a preliminary guess on Thancred? I mean, I would have to think he's in the A tier, but
His for me, he starts at an A and could potentially go to S, depending on how things shake out. But quality wise, he's no doubt an A for me, like with those upgrades that he got.
I agree with that. The winter units. I can tell you right now, the top four here: Mashri, Ramada, Victoria, Vinera are not even D's for me.
No.
I won't delete them. I'll just leave them there for honorable mention. Winter Revies, not there either. Winter Wrath, we previously had in the cost bucket, but now she has an MA2 and an MA3 and a limit break upgrade. This is a tough one. She's at minimum a C. I think a case for a B could be made. The thing with her is that she's got a very strong niche, but that niche is also one of them in the meta, in the S tier. It's a very anti-magic niche. You got some Dispel in there. Pierce type attacks, which obviously people aren't really gearing for right now. I could be okay with B, I think, but that seems high. I don't know.
If Sodali wasn't so prevalent, if Rikku wasn't so prevalent,
Yeah.
I think that you could make the case for B. I think because of Earth's strength at the moment, she's C.
I think it's fair.
But yeah, I think people maybe underestimate like how good she is against magic. She got some compelling upgrades. She has like the 50% to confuse now, which is also very strong. I think kit wise she holds up to what we have there in C. So I think it's I think that's a good spot.
Yeah. Okay, so then that leaves us with our now basically final picture. Does anyone else still stick out? And obviously, guys in chat too. Like, we do value your opinion. If we see you guys really like, if you think we're way off on someone here, please let us know. We do still want to debate this, but I think for the most part, this at least looks cleaner. It may not be perfect. I think there's some units in the A tier that, as we mentioned, are on the way down. I don't think they're in that B level yet, nor do I think some of these B units are in the C level to drop them down. Again, C to me is clearly like old gen units that have held up a little bit over time. B tier is mostly newer units that have time and place, or they're good enough. And A tier is really to me like what's in the rotation of playing with the S tier, all things considered.
I think that, I mean, thinking back on it, I think that maybe we were rounding up a little bit too much on Summer Glassy, just for like memory's sake. So we should probably put her where she belongs, which is probably C.
All right, I'll put her first though. I don't disagree. I haven't
Yeah.
used her in quite some time either, but I know that even at the onset of the Greatsword meta, she was starting to show some downside with like Cloud's limit break, which I'll never forget that he like almost one taps her with that. That I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think we may be a little bit harsh on Cypher also.
I can put it back him up. Yeah, yeah.
I just like, for me, like I just haven't seen that great result. I mean, he's had like mediocre results basically since he was released, but it's mostly been like team based with him. I feel like he hasn't had like the perfect team and hasn't had the perfect cards around him. That's why I was kind of like saying like his last chance at the coming into the meta and being like proving that he's A caliber is Mont and X Death, because they're really both in his wheelhouse. And if that doesn't happen, absolutely he goes to B. For now, though, I feel like his kit is still good enough that he should be A.
I think it's fine. And yeah, I think I'm comfortable with the rest of this. I don't see anyone in D tier either that should go up. I think Shal's might have a case, maybe, just because of the limit break upgrade. But even then, I only see that in cost limited stuff. I don't actually see that in real Guild War. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it kind of tracks too, because if you look at like a lot of the units that are around them at now, they're kind of like similar time frames and like eras of the game. Like obviously there's some exceptions, but I think for the most part, like this is looking pretty solid to me. If we moved Glassy down, I think Aldoa probably should go down too.
I agree.
Definitely go before Glassy. I think I would put Glassy above her.
I agree. Yep, I think that's fair.
That one's sticking out. Everything else I think is looking pretty good to me now.
I think so too. I think so too. 1 second, just moving stuff around.
Thunder Mage in chat said that he has both Halaya and Winter Wrath maxed, and he rates Halaya a little bit better. So
I agree with that. That's not surprising.
Thunder Mage is one of the predominant mono lightning players, so I trust his opinion there.
I do too. Yep, that tracks for me. Uh, I think that's it. I just honorable mention. I think I have some copium for Duran in the future. I think, given the Rikku Vinera angle.
Yeah,
If I
we might be a little bit harsh on him with C actually.
yeah, I recall statistically his accuracy was better than I remembered, and he's very much an anti-physical unit. The moment the meta starts to shift away again from pure magic, he's gonna obviously be a lot better. And I think where Rikku is positioned right now with Vinera incoming, Duran has some upward.
Yeah. I think the problem for Duran is a lot of people just have didn't invest into a limited time unit that was kind of mid. So we don't really have the opportunity to play him at his max potential, or at least most people don't. So that hurts him, for that as well.
Yep, absolutely. But no, either way, I think it's a good spot to pause. We can obviously revisit. We can correct some errors if we feel like in the later. But I think for now, this pretty well encapsulates things and uh, actually makes a lot of intuitive sense the more I look at it. When I, to your point, see the groupings of when they were released, it's clearly like a bias toward a lot of the newer units, with a couple role players here and there that have gotten certain upgrades. But yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with this. I mean, again, just to like a lot of this we do based off of not only just general top 10, but our own testing. Like we stress test stuff all the time. We have all the units in the game, both between you and I, that we set up various iterations of things. Almost everything's max reincarnated, and yeah, I think you're seeing much of it. Obviously, again, you're seeing this anomaly of Sephiroth kind of dominating the top 10 in the last week, but it was very beatable. A lot of these guilds that were running it lost. So even though we had the pick rate, they didn't have the win rate that corresponded to it. Um,
I think that his role though is more to protect Shrek, right? Because people want to play Shrek right now to
right,
protect against Rikku, to protect against Sadali, and Sephiroth really is just there because he's honestly the best partner for her and is a bouncer for her. So that is why that team has always worked, and why I think that he's still there.
I agree with that totally. Yeah, you're seeing the rest of them role players offense a little bit different, but not really. Based off your story, yeah, Shrek is it. And I know people in chat are still trying to disagree that she's not the S tier, but I'm telling you, a stress test against the variety of meta teams in the field that exists, Shrek still has it. And the Dario team absolutely does enable her too. I think most people miss that component of her, that if you're team building with Shrek right now, you may not be using all the same units we are. Are you using Summer Resnick with her? I don't know. Are you using Dario with her? I don't know. So there could be some other factors in there that may be skewing the average player experience with her as well.
I don't honestly don't know how you can make a case that she's not S, like with the dispel ceiling, with the honeycomb dispel, barrier break, limit burst, which is insane. She's got the physical, mitigation with the barrier, and um, just the one shot potential that she has is, I'd say, unmatched in the game, other than like maybe Sottily.
Right? She's at least guaranteed to clear. This one. Yeah, like at least half the teams are clearing fresh, getting upwards of 5 stars there as of yesterday. The Seth team is by far a little bit behind, but she's still got the pick rate. She's got the results behind it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, no doubt in my mind.
Yep. Okay, cool. Well, this was a good way to end the year. This was a fun tier list to do. We do add 2 hot takes. Do you want to hit these, or is it too late?
Well, it's just two of them. We'll bang them out. And
Yeah. Why not?
people are
That
still here, and the debate's been good in the chat, so people are hyped.
it has. I'm down with this. I like this. Yeah, that'll be a hot take next week. Is Shrek and S tier? We'll do that hot take next week. Okay, this is a good hot take. Gumi is purposely limiting raids as they know the time commitment and accompanying them as they currently are constructed is not in a good place. Is this a hot take, or do you think this is true?
I kind of feel like this is true because I was thinking about like the amount of raids and even raid revivals that we've had this year has been the lowest that it's ever been. Um, And I feel like that there has to be some element of truth to that, because and it's always been like a time sink in the game since the beginning. It's always been complained about since the beginning. They've made some changes to it over time to make it better. I feel like maybe they're waiting to re-enable this until they get the background farming thing figured out for raids, and then maybe we'll see them on a more regular cadence. I think it's kind of a struggle at the moment though, because like a lot of any like new player, they need this gear to be able to compete. So I wish there was some way to kind of get this gear in people's hands. And I kind of thought about this when the new event with LeBlanc kind of gave us that ticket and kind of gave some materials that we haven't been able to farm outside of raids usually. Um, and that seemed to kind of play into that same idea.
I don't think this is a hot take, but I don't know if it's due to the feature of not having the auto replay. I actually think that Gumia overall has an equipment problem at the moment, where as time has gone on, a lot of times early on in the game, this UR or +5 gear was like banger, best in slot gear, and was like a must have. And there's been a run of equipment pieces that just haven't been all that great. And that's not only true for Raid, but that's also true for things like Trials of Reckoning. That's true for other game modes where they've released equipment, and it's usually either like, okay, it's the greatest thing ever and you have to have it, or it's just too niche and too relevant and you end up never using it. And I don't often see any much of in between. And I think because of that, their propensity to want to have guild raid is likely diminished, where they don't want to release a piece of gear like the Alex ring that's just this like mindless broken thing you put on all the time and don't think twice. And I don't think that's also good for the game. But you also don't want to introduce something like the sharpshooter's monocle that's so niche and whatever that people aren't pulling for the unit for that week to clear the raid and they're not using it after. And I think that the equipment is probably a little bit of a bigger factor, because that to me is the whole reason why they do the raid. It's a way to farm a brand new piece of equipment, and if they don't have compelling equipment to do it, then it's not worth doing in the first place, in addition to the fact that people aren't happy doing it because of the lack of the auto feature.
I think that whole problem that I agree that that's a problem. The equipment is a problem in the game, not only for like the amounts, the sheer amounts, but also like it's very top heavy. And I think that the reliquaries has created that problem, at least, more so than any other piece of gear in the game. We like the reliquaries overall, so I would say just dump all of like that old raid gear into the reliquary. Maybe make some new stages, so for as like a new player experience. Dump the raids entirely because nobody's really ever loved it to begin with, and build around something that people at least somewhat enjoy.
Yeah, no, raids are tough because at least I've always been. I mean, we're whales. We keep up with the game. We've always had a unit that can reasonably solo clear the raid stage, or at least duo it, like solo with two units. I think for the average player, as multi has subsided and multi has become a little more of a headache, raid doesn't make as much sense to get into a room of four and auto battle for the average player. So I think as the game has gotten away from the multi as like a key necessary way to enhance your game experience, I think the raids have suffered because of that, because not everyone can solo clear a raid. Just they can't.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, if anybody at Gumi is listening, now that I think about it, I think that's the way to go. Put all of the legacy raid gear and anything new into the reliquaries system on a monthly basis and let us get it that way. For multiplayer, focus on the multiplayer events like you have been recently. Put those out once every month or every couple months, as like that's kind of like where the multiplayer fun is, like where you can get small groups of people together, take down a challenge, get some good rewards, and I think those have been pretty well received.
I agree. All right, that brings us to our second hot take, and unfortunately, we only have two tonight. We did not have enough content this week that we thought warranted new takes that we hadn't already discussed as of late. But the second one here, this is a very hot take. Well, I might have exposed my hand. Generous and player-friendly collabs like Tactics and 14 will ultimately not move the needle in the player base and bring people in or back like the Addison Ray collaboration did. Why did you have to put the last part of that?
I don't know.
So
it's a purposely like incredibly hot take.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was mine that I threw out there. And I think that this is like a molten lava hot take because I think it's the absolute opposite is true. I think that the players have enjoyed Final Fantasy Tactics. I think that players will also enjoy 14. And I remember like when this game first started, there weren't just Tactics fans that came into the game. There were a fair number of 14 fans that came in because this game launched with a Final Fantasy 14 event with Thancred and Yshtola. You as far last time I checked, 14 is still the top MMO in the world, or if not, it's right up there. So I can absolutely see some small interest, maybe some new 14 players coming in to see what War of the Visions is about. So I think this is a good thing for the game. Maybe some players will come back to it. Maybe it will hold the interest of some players that did come back for tactics, and now okay, now I can build up Thancred again. I have that unit from before. He's going to be good again. That's pretty fun. So I think this is a net positive for the game, and I hope they continue to do it.
I agree totally. Yeah, this is absolutely hot take. The thing about gotcha games in particular is that they are, by their nature, kind of predatory on player psychology. And taking that into account, how people interact with gotchas, not only in how they spend, but I do also think about when it comes to things like FOMO, when it comes back to hype around certain things. That's like the time limited nature of how gotchas work. That when you introduce these collabs, even if on like a per unit basis, like the tactics rerun and this 14 rerun doesn't get them exactly the amount of money that like I don't know Yuna did. Like I'm sure that's probably the case that more people likely brought in money for Yuna than they brought in for a tactics rerun where most of the stuff was free. What they do by having these good kind of collabs, you get good exposure from content creators like us and others where that feel good feeling in the community can drive in like positive overall marketing and hype, but then you get people that have a higher propensity to want to spend in the game knowing that they feel good about the game. The moment people stop feeling good about the game is the moment that they just go, A, it's not worth my time, or B, I'm just going free to play because I don't want to give them my money. So all these kinds of like non revenue hunting strategies still have overall value, particularly for a game in this stage of the life cycle where I think they've kind of like plateaued where what the whales and krakens can spend and what they want to put in, and we're in that like sample size and we know people in that sample size. So I don't think I'm just like speaking out of thin air here. We've seen a lot of those people retire, and so I think because they've kind of plateaued how much they can ride that small percentage of the player base, things like this help to widen that pool again and to help kind of like reinvigorate, just to like keep it going for a little while. And I'm sure it's going to fade again 2 months from now. No one's going to be using tactics units. We're already kind of seeing it. Agrias is struggling. Sid is debatably lower. So like tactics has some short legs in terms of the actual gameplay experience for us right now. But we're going to remember this, and we're going to remember 14. And so when we talk about future Final Fantasy collabs, this is like goodwill kind of stuff that if you keep doing it over and over and over and over, some capacity, like that's going to carry your game for longer.
100%. That's kind of why I said I hope that they continue to do it throughout the year, every few months. Even if they bring back some of these collabs, like I think I gave the example of Final Fantasy X before, where Tidus is a beloved character by so many Final Fantasy fans. If they rerun that collaboration, give him a rework, similar to what they've done with some of these other units, and bam, you're gonna have people that not only come back because they've played War of the Visions before and their favorite unit is Tidus or Titus, however you want to say it. Um, but that's going to propel maybe some new folks to come in and check it out too. So um, I wanted to do one quick thing in the chat. I saw Flat Planet said, "Will we ever receive a new 90 cost vision card for fire, wind, or lightning elements? It's been years since we got a 90 cost vision card for those elements." He said the last one was released was with Yuffie, which was Dark Ifrit. That's true. So that was the fire lightning one that we finally got the first one there. I think we will see it.
I think we will.
I was going to say that I think we're going to see another light dark card though first, and I think that's might be Mont's card. If
Oh.
we don't know what Mont's card is. Great Sword Mont. but with Exdeath coming in, with Mont coming, with them coming at the same time, it seems like maybe we're primed for like a light dark. Maybe it could be Alexander. Like that would be kind of super cool for a tank to come in. Like finally see Alexander and have it be a light dark card. Um, Especially like with his armor kind of being significant, and
Yep.
that would be really cool. But we'll see what they do. It
I'm
could be just a run of the mill job card too.
It
So
could
who
be. It
knows?
could be. You have me very excited though. I would love that. But yeah, no, I do think they're going to keep doing our Dark Espers. I think the Dark Espers, honestly, are some of the greatest additions in the game. Not only the Espers typically really well received from a value perspective, but the cards are really nice. They're some of the easiest cards to still build around as foundational blocks for some of these dual element teams, which is the perfect hybrid between pure rainbow or pure job and mono element. I still think you can get away with those dual element classes, and we've used many teams where all it takes is just like one of those cards to be the glue of the foundation because they are so naturally good. They have great individual stats on them. I would love for them to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, was that the last one that we even had in the game? Was it Dark Ifrit?
No, Dark.
No, we've had Dark Siren.
Dark Titan.
Never
Dark
mind.
Titan might have been the last
Dark
one.
Titan, Dark Siren. It has been a minute though. Yeah, Dark Titan I think was the last one. So that was right before. That was like right when Mont came out, right?
Right, Ashen
Or
Mon a
the
year ago.
Ashen Mont.
Yep.
So yeah, it has been a while.
Good question. Yep. Fingers crossed. I hope they do it.
Yep. Agreed.
But all right, well, we are going to end there. We definitely, obviously, went over our normal time frame, but it was a good discussion. The tier list is an important one. I think this is one that we needed to catch up on, but we got a lot of stuff coming anyway that was worth talking about tonight. We'll probably revisit most of it a week from now. But for those who are not in the, I don't know, Japanese time zone yet, I think you still have New Year's 24 hours from now. I don't know that's even Japan. I'm sorry, it's not there yet, but we are encroaching on midnight for New Year's. So if we don't talk to you guys, have a happy New Year, and we'll be here next Monday. And thanks again for joining us tonight.
Yeah, we'll see you in 2025 with another episode. So until then, and have a happy New